To speak further of this, we have with us in the studio Mr. Jawad Ashraf, the High Commissioner of India to Singapore. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll pick up a point from Dr. Balakrishnan there. Free trade agreements must begin at home. Now, what at home in India made the Prime Minister Narendra Modi reluctant to sign on to the RCEP?
Well, all negotiations in FTAs or any international negotiations are based on a set of domestic interests and national interests. In this particular case, and let's speak about RCEP, let me first say that, India understands and believes in the strategic and economic merits of RCEP. Since 2012, we have negotiated in good faith with a great deal of commitment, and a lot of hard work has gone into it. I've personally been associated with it for some time, last year when it was being done in Singapore. We've also been pretty flexible and made some concessions on our side, particularly in the area of services. But there were concerns for our industry and for our agriculture sector in the way eventually the agreement turned out to be in Bangkok. We were particularly concerned, as you can imagine, that our trade deficit with the RCEP countries have gone up from $7 billion in 2004 to about $105 billion in 2018, trade deficit. Now, nearly more than half of it is, of course, with China. So what we were looking for is a set of safeguards that would ensure that there was no dumping. We weren't looking for safeguards to protect our industry, but we were looking for safeguards in a way that would prevent dumping either directly or via other countries. And therefore, there were a lot of technical issues relating to the base year, technical issues relating to what triggers safeguards and what is the scope of coverage. There were issues relating to...
I'm sorry to cut in.
Sorry.
So would a very big issue, am I putting it crudely if I say the Indian economy is at this point, for legitimate reasons, not sufficiently competitive to be having a trade agreement which lifts all barriers with 15 other countries?
Well, we were willing to make we already have CECA and FTAs with ASEAN, with Korea, Japan, Singapore separately, Thailand and others. We're negotiating with Australia and New Zealand. So it isn't that we're not committed to free trade. And by the way, we are continuing to open our economy, continuing to make it easy for people to do business in. We've climbed from 142 to 63 in a matter of 4 years in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index. But really here we were looking at the balance of negotiated interests. And from our perspective, when you enter into an FTA, there are also, you're opening up yourself to a commitment for unfettered, in a sense, imports of a large range of goods. Currently, especially in our small-scale industries, and especially in our farm sector, there were serious concerns that if we were to open at this stage, and in the manner in which the agreement was structured so far, that it could cause serious injuries to our industry, and particularly at a time when we are in the process of major internal reorganization, modernization and restructuring of our industry, particularly through Prime Minister's flagship Make in India program. So yes, we were all set if those concerns relating to certain kinds of safeguards had been addressed to join.
But you see, as you mentioned, negotiations started 2012.
Yes.
And this is the former Indian High Commissioner to the UK. He said this: it's a major missed opportunity. India needed to move ahead in the last 5 years towards further land, labor, legal reforms. And of course, you're talking about currency as well. So it's not a surprise. You've had the years to do this. And as an example, your Prime Minister tried to move on land reform, and the domestic political backlash was not good for him. So he had to back off on that. Does not India have to make these tough, painful, hard choices now?
Well, I'd say that we are making those tough, hard choices. Look, we've covered a lot of ground in the 5 years that this government has been in office. As I just mentioned to you, look at the distance we've traveled in terms of our reforms, in terms of making it easier for people to do business in India. And it is reflected also in the steep hike in the foreign direct investments in India. India is one of the most favored destinations for FDI, not just because of the market or the opportunity, but because it has become easier to get into India and operate there. We have reduced our taxes. We have made our tax regime more transparent. More administration is much better. Compliance requirements have been reduced. Capital markets are being deepened and expanded. So in every aspect, there is we have removed or repealed 1,400 plus acts or laws, pieces of legislation in just last 5 years. We have introduced more than 10,000 specific steps of reforms in the past 5 years. And I have to say this, that it is not just the central government, but a number of state governments are also taking very far-reaching and bold measures to make it easier for people to do business and make our industry more competitive. Our infrastructure is expanding at 3 to 4 times the rate it did in previous years. Can you imagine we're building 30 kilometers per day of national highways. We're building 6 ports, 18 new airports. So you're saying
the time is not right now, but give it a while and India could conceivably find the right time to rejoin this free trade agreement?
I would say further. I would say that, look, this is in mutual interest of all our partners, not just India, ASEAN and the other members of RCEP, that if they are willing to also look at some of our concerns, which we have very clearly articulated and they are very aware of it, then we would certainly be looking positively at RCEP. So it isn't just a question of where we are at this point of time, but what we expect may be a reflection of where we are at this point of time. So if it is in the interest, and I think in a country the size of India, 1.3 billion people, the third largest economy in Asia, soon to be among the third largest economy in the world, and we are heading towards a target of $5 trillion economy. There is importance to this market, and I think Asian future depends to a large extent on how we all work together to create a mutual circle of expanding prosperity, then I think it would also be prudent for some of our negotiating partners to once again look seriously if there are those issues and concerns which Prime Minister also spoke about, if those can also once again be revisited. And maybe then we would certainly look at it. We have never said that we're not going to join RCEP. We're saying at this stage in the form it is, it does not address our concerns.
All right, let's move beyond trade right now. And I'll quote the Australian Prime Minister here. He said, of course, the bigger and better deal had India signed on. And he went on to say integration of the economy of the Indo-Pacific is incredibly important for the prosperity of the region, but also for its security. The implicit message in this is that RCEP needed India as a counterweight to other concerns for security reasons. India now, the Indo-Pacific strategy, that an RCEP does not have India in it. Does India now need to be maybe expanding its outreach because it has not relatively speaking, not stepped up at this point on the RCEP?
You got a fair point, but let me say this to this. See, our commitment to Indo-Pacific region, our vision for Indo-Pacific region stands. We remain deeply committed to playing our role in advancing a vision of an open, inclusive and balanced region connected by secure seas, integrated by trade, which is stable, peaceful and prosperous. We'll do our part in partnership with our great partners in ASEAN region and others. But I'd say that FTAs is one indicator of either an openness of an economy or its willingness to be part of the global stream of trade. There are other measures, including the ones that we are taking domestically. In addition to that, our political commitment remains strong. Our security cooperation in the region is expanding very rapidly. With Singapore's, in fact, just having the air exercises in India. And we've just completed a trilateral exercise, just to give you an example. But what is more important is that we share a very clear vision with our ASEAN partners in a rules-based international order, in multilateralism, and for all countries to abide by their international commitments. So we will continue to work with countries at political level, at security and defense level, but also economically. And I can assure you that our commitment to expanding our trade and investment relations, our people-to-people ties, our connectivity will continue to grow in the region.
Thanks very much indeed, Mr. Chad Ashraf, the High Commissioner to Singapore, India's High Commissioner to Singapore. Thanks so much for joining us in this show.
Thank you very much.